What if Ferrari just changed the rules of the game without anyone in Formula One realizing it in time? While every team arrived at the Chinese Grand Prix thinking it would be just another race in the technical battle of 2026, Frédéric Vasseur showed up with something no one expected. A massive upgrade package that has completely surprised engineers, technical directors and rivals across the paddock. We are not talking about a simple aerodynamic improvement or small adjustments to gain a few tenths. We are talking about a radical development that could completely transform the performance of the Ferrari on the track and that has even forced several teams to look at the regulations again to understand how it is possible for this solution to be legal. Because what Ferrari has brought to China is not a normal evolution. It is a strategic move that could change the balance of power in Formula One if it really works as the team's internal data indicates. A new aerodynamic concept, extremely aggressive technical solutions and an interpretation of the regulations that many rivals simply did not see coming. The big question is now inevitable. Has Ferrari found the key to the regulations before everyone else? Or are we facing one of the riskiest moves of the Vasseur era? The movement that Ferrari has prepared for the Chinese Grand Prix is not born from improvisation or a simple reaction to what happened in the first race of the season. In reality, it is the result of a strategy that Frédéric Vasseur had been preparing for months within Maranello. From the beginning of the SF26 project, Ferrari's technical management was clear that the new active aerodynamic regulations of 2026 would open gray areas that could be exploited by the most aggressive teams at a conceptual level. While much of the paddock opted for more conservative interpretations of the regulations, Ferrari decided to study each line of the regulations with a clear idea. Find an advantage before others understood where the real opportunity lay. And that work is what has now exploded in Shanghai with a massive update package that has caught all the teams completely by surprise. The heart of this technical revolution is in the famous rear wing that within the team has been baptized almost ironically as the McLaren. Although the name sounds light, the idea behind this component is extremely serious. Ferrari detected that the active aerodynamics regulation does not require that the main plane of the spoiler maintain a traditional orientation when the system comes into operation. That small regulatory window allowed Maranello engineers to design a structure capable of rotating on its own axis when the car enters low resistance mode on a straight line. Instead of simply reducing downforce as other solutions do, this design completely changes the behavior of the wing, generating a kind of inverse effect that produces lift instead of downforce, unloading the rear of the car and reducing drag much more aggressively. The result is a significant increase in top speed, and the data circulated after the Bahrain tests point to a gain of between 5 and 8 km per hour on the straight. On a circuit like Shanghai, which has a straight of more than a kilometer before the big braking towards the hairpin, a difference like this can completely change the possibilities of attack and defense during the race. From a technical point of view, the key to this package is the synergy between all its elements. Ferrari has not brought isolated parts, but rather components designed to work together within a broader development plan. The Macarena rear wing, the active flow floor, and the general architecture of the SF26 are designed to create an extremely aerodynamically efficient car, capable of maintaining speed in a straight line without losing stability in long corners. This is especially important in Shanghai, a circuit that mixes very long support curves with a gigantic straight where aerodynamic resistance can make enormous differences in lap time. If the concept works as the simulations indicate, Ferrari will not only reduce its speed deficit against Mercedes, but could turn that weakness into a strategic strength during races. But introducing such a radical package also carries considerable risks. The Chinese Grand Prix is held in a sprint format, which means that the teams only have one free practice session before entering directly into qualifying. That leaves very little room to fully understand the behavior of parts as complex as the new spoiler or the adaptive floor. If the interaction between both systems generates unexpected changes in the car's balance, drivers could find themselves with a car that is very fast in theory but extremely difficult to adjust on the track. Furthermore, Shanghai is a circuit that requires a lot of aerodynamic stability, especially in the long turn one, where the car remains supported for several seconds while the turning angle progressively increases. Any sudden change in downforce could seriously affect the driver's confidence in that area. Added to all this is the political factor, which always accompanies any radical innovation in Formula One. By exploiting the loopholes in the regulations to the maximum, Ferrari has inevitably put an enormous focus on its project. Mercedes already pushed for the FIA to review the package ahead of its debut, and although the body has declared it completely legal, that doesn't mean the discussion is over. In this sport, when a team finds a particularly effective interpretation of the rules, the rest of the paddock often reacts quickly by pushing for technical clarifications or changes to the directives. If Ferrari's package proves to be as competitive as the team's internal data suggests, the technical debate around this concept is likely to increase in the coming weeks. In the midst of all this context, the SF26 arrives in China with a solid foundation that gives meaning to the risk assumed by Vasseur. During winter testing, the car showed a very convincing combination of reliability, long-run pace and overall balance, allowing Ferrari to build a stable platform on which to develop more aggressive ideas. The chassis has been described as very efficient and balanced, with good traction and fairly predictable behavior for the drivers. That explains why the team has dared to take such a big step at this early stage of the season. When the car's foundation is strong, introducing radical innovations becomes a calculated gamble rather than a leap into the void. However, the real reason behind this technical offensive is in the competitive context of the championship. Mercedes started the season with a bang in Australia, where George Russell's victory made it clear that the German team had an advantage. Ferrari knew it couldn't afford to lose too much ground in the early races, especially when the data from Melbourne showed a gap of close to 8/10 in qualifying. Waiting to make improvements later in the calendar could mean the championship slipped away too soon. That's why Vasseur made a clear decision: bring development forward, take logistical risks and launch the package ahead of schedule to try to change the dynamics of the championship from the beginning. If the gamble works, the Chinese Grand Prix could become the first major turning point of the season. Ferrari would not only be closing the gap on Mercedes, but it would also be showing that it has understood the real possibilities of the 2026 aerodynamic regulation better than anyone. In Formula One, finding a conceptual advantage before others can define entire seasons, and that is exactly what Vasseur is trying to achieve with this move. As Ferrari quietly prepared its big technical coup for China, an uneasy feeling was beginning to emerge in the rest of the paddock. It wasn't just curiosity about the new parts that the Scuderia had brought to Shanghai, it was something deeper. The suspicion that Frédéric Vasseur might have found an interpretation of the regulations that the rest of the teams simply hadn't seen coming. In modern Formula One, where differences between cars are often measured in hundredths, discovering a conceptual advantage can be more valuable than any incremental improvement. And precisely for this reason, when the first details of the Ferrari package began to circulate, the reactions within rival garages were immediate. The first thing that caught our attention was the speed with which Ferrari decided to introduce these updates. Typically, teams wait several races before releasing such large development packages, especially in a new regulation where the correlation between simulation and track can still generate surprises. But Vasseur decided to accelerate the plan and advance a set of parts that was originally planned to arrive later on the schedule. This decision was not accidental. Ferrari knew that Mercedes had started the season with a clear lead after the Australian race, and allowing the German team to gain too much distance in the championship could be dangerous. Instead of reacting slowly, Vasseur opted for an aggressive strategy, attacking from the beginning and forcing the rest of the teams to respond. And that's where the move starts to have much bigger implications than a simple aerodynamic improvement. If the new SF26 concept works as the Maranello simulations indicate, Ferrari would not only be closing the gap with Mercedes, but could have discovered a completely different development direction than other teams have followed. In the recent history of Formula One, this has already happened several times. When a team comes up with an innovative interpretation of the regulations, it can take months for the rest of the paddock to replicate it, especially if it requires redesigning key parts of the car. That means that even a relatively small advantage early on can become a strategic weapon for much of the season. The reaction from some teams was almost immediate even before the car hit the track. Engineers from various garages began studying images, rumors and leaks about the new parts, trying to understand exactly what Ferrari had done. In parallel, some teams decided to ask the FIA directly about the legality of certain elements of the package, a clear sign that the concept had aroused suspicion. This type of political move is not unusual in Formula One. When a rival appears to have found a significant advantage, the first reaction is usually to check if there is any interpretation of the regulations that could limit it. In this case, however, the FIA's initial response was clear: Ferrari's design complies with the current rules. If Ferrari manages to demonstrate from the first sessions that the SF26 has made a clear leap in performance, the narrative of the championship could quickly change. Mercedes would no longer be the only technical reference at the start of the season, and the fight for leadership could become a much more open battle between several teams. But if the package does not work as expected in Maranello, the pressure on Ferrari could also increase, because introducing such big changes so early in the season means taking significant risks. In other words, the Chinese Grand Prix is not just another race on the calendar. It is the first major test for Frédéric Vasseur's technical strategy and for the most ambitious concept that Ferrari has attempted to develop in recent years. Because if the package works, the message to the entire grid will be impossible to ignore. Ferrari would not only have reduced the gap with its rivals, it would have shown that it has understood the new regulations before anyone else. And in a championship where innovation has always been the key to success, getting ahead of the rest of the paddock by even a few races can completely change the story of a season. The Chinese Grand Prix, therefore, is not just another stop on the calendar. It is the first big moment where we will see if Frédéric Vasseur's bet can become the beginning of a new stage for Ferrari, or if the rest of Formula One will quickly find a way to respond. Let me know in the comments what you think about all this.